What's going on, college football fans? Welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. As always, I am your co-host, Marcus, joined by my co-host, Mason. We've got our overreaction show for Week 12 of the college football season. It was a damn good one, man. Holy cow. Very, very entertaining football in Week 12. We saw some big top 10 matchups. We saw some teams that had no business even being on the field with some of these top 10, 12 teams. Putting them to rest, giving them a week off, putting the hurt on them. It was very, very interesting stuff. Mason, there's a lot to glean from Week 12 as we get close to wrapping up the season. I mean, here we go, man. This is just about it. We got a couple more weeks of the regular season, and we've still got some fuzzy conference championship pictures. We've still got some fuzzy pictures as far as the playoff goes. We'll try to nail that down the best we can as we go today. How was Week 12 for you, buddy?
It was really fun. I had absolutely nothing to do yesterday, which is rare for a Saturday in the fall for my family, but didn't have to go anywhere. I was able to sit down from pretty much 9 a.m. Yesterday morning to like midnight last night. I was just watching football. It's a perfect dude day. Loved it. And my wife and daughter even sat there with me the whole time, which was a little bit annoying, if I'm honest, but nice of them to do. Nice of them to join me anyways. I had a great time though. There was a lot of good football to watch. I know you guys watched it probably close to as much as I did, if not as much. And it was equally as exciting for, I think, everybody. I mean, look, it's not as fun when your team loses, but ultimately we're getting towards the college football playoff. Only 2 weeks left in the season, which is hard to believe. But yeah, let's get into it, Mark. Let's break some of these games down and talk about what it means moving forward.
Well, I think one of the most important games, of the weekend was definitely Tennessee at Georgia. So let's kind of react, or in some cases, probably overreact to that one. We'll start with the winner. I try to typically do that, and then I get carried away talking about the loser a lot of times in these games. But Georgia's offense looked pretty good tonight, man. And I mean, it really had to do everything to do with the fact that the offensive line obviously looked better than it did last week against Ole Miss. But, I mean, plain and simple, dude, the receivers caught passes. They were hitting the hands, and they caught them for the most part. There were still a couple of drops, still a couple of them that you'd want back. I can think of Arian Smith. There was one towards the front pylon of the end zone there that I think he wanted back. I could tell by his body language that he really wanted that one back, and I wish he did have another shot at it. But Oscar Delp, I mean, you got to tip your cap. I've been on Oscar Delp's ass all year. I've been on his ass all year talking about he ain't nothing. He couldn't wear 19's jockstrap, right? And I still think that's somewhat true. Don't get me wrong, but he looked a lot better. It was more of what we had expected. He doesn't have to be Brock Bowers. That's the whole point. And they said it on the broadcast. Chris Fowler was like, dude, looking like, Brock Bowers out there tonight. It's like, all right, come on. Don't do that. That's not fair. But Oscar Delp looked a lot better. Lawson Lucky looked a little bit better. Still some stuff that you would kind of, not love. Ben Jurasik looked a lot better. Georgia got a ton of help from the tight ends in this game, and that's something we just haven't really seen this season. And I mean, quite frankly, a piece that's been missing since last year. But you got to tip your cap to the offensive line. Georgia's defense did what they've done all year, pretty much. I mean, they did exactly what they've done all year, and that's jump out there, figure out what teams are doing, and then make adjustments to it and strangle them to death. And that's exactly what Georgia's defense did in the second half. I was very impressed with Georgia and the way they stood up in this situation, especially after getting down 10-0. I mean, things were kind of looking, not great there in the first quarter, but Georgia kept chopping. And look, I have to say, I'm also mildly impressed with Nico. I he didn't do anything to cost this team the game this past weekend, and time again, I've seen Georgia go up against Tennessee, go against Florida over the last few years, and trying to break in new quarterbacks, or you've got just a quarterback for the 1 year or whatever, and get in that big game and just get the deer in the headlights, right? I didn't think Nico had a deer in the headlights or anything like that. Um, I thought he did a good job running the offense, especially early in the game. Things weren't going quite as smoothly in the second half, like I said. Not overly impressive stats or anything. I don't want to say Nico for Heisman or anything like that, but I do have to say, in a game of that magnitude on the road, I thought Nico was at least composed, and there's a lot of things that he could have done a lot worse in this game. But tip of the cap to Georgia. What did you think about this one, man? Georgia now has multiple top 10 wins in the regular season this year. And I don't think there's anybody else that can even say that. It's the hardest schedule in the country. Here Georgia is. They're finished up with their SEC schedule already, and got a cupcake, and have got Georgia Tech left to finish up. It's looking like a 10-2 season for Georgia.
Yeah, and we said going into this season, 10-2 was probably the floor for Georgia. As we look back, and really, I mean, you could have said 9-3. 9-3, I guess, was the absolute bottom for this season for Georgia. And they could still slip up to Georgia Tech. I'm not overlooking the Yellow Jackets or anything like that. They did just beat Miami, so there is some potential there for an upset. But assuming that they go 10-2, I think that would fall within the realm of possibilities for Georgia. This isn't some Georgia season that's over at this point. Now, is their offense good enough to win a national championship? That's yet to be determined. I thought that the offensive line played much better against arguably a tougher defensive line in Tennessee's versus Ole Miss. They make a move and move Monroe Freeling from right tackle to left tackle. Ernest Green, he's out with a stinger. Kind of shifts some things up. Xavier Trush ends up playing right tackle instead. So the mix-up of the offensive line seemed to have some sort of positive effect. If they can replicate that sort of protection for Carson Beck, who looked like the Carson Beck we expected him to going into this season, I think that this is a Georgia team and a Georgia offense that can win a national championship, that plays complementary football to their defense, which is still a top 5 defense in the SEC, good enough to get to win them some playoff games and things like that. I said a couple of weeks ago before the Ole Miss game, I said if Carson Beck doesn't throw another pick, Georgia wins the national championship, like for the remainder of the season. And look what happens. They beat a team. Now, granted, this game was at home, but they beat really the best defense that they faced all year because Carson protected the football, played effectively. Still no run game for the most part. That we're expecting Georgia to get healthier in their running back room, and hopefully whenever they can get some semblance of consistency at the offensive line positions, they're able to run the football more effectively. But all in all, the Georgia offense looked much better. After the first 2 drives, I would say they really settled in there, and Carson played almost perfect. I mean, realistically, all the drops that were had. I mean, if Arian Smith doesn't drop 2 passes, if Arian Smith doesn't push off on the pass that he had no business pushing off on and getting the PI,
yeah, seriously.
I mean Carson. London Humphreys doesn't see the ball, so he doesn't get up under a ball that was perfectly thrown. He throws to Nitro Tuggle the first throw that he's had all season, and he ran the wrong route because he's a true freshman. I mean, there were a lot of mistakes by these wide receivers that just got covered up because of how good Carson Beck played in this game, and it actually made Carson look a little bit worse. But at the end of the day, I mean, he could have easily had 500 yards passing in this football game, and it could have gotten pretty ugly. But I was really impressed with the Georgia offense. There's really not a ton to knock on Tennessee in this game. I think that they showed up. really had great success the first two drives of the game. I thought that the scripted drives went really well for Tennessee in this football game, and it seemed, as a Georgia fan, it seemed like I was in for a long night. I mean, I was really impressed with how methodical things were. They were doing kind of like we said, Mark, where if you want to beat Georgia, Ole Miss had shown you the video on how to do that. It's short, intermediate passes. Quick, get the ball out. Don't allow the pass rush to overcome you. Right, play hurry up. We saw a lot of that with Tennessee. We were kind of questioning whether or not we would see that with this offense, and it worked really well in the first half. Kind of kept them in the football game, and then and you saw it in that second quarter. Georgia started kind of figuring things out a little bit, and the defense started playing a little bit tighter and swarming the football a little bit better. And then the second half, although Dylan Sampson was able to run the football effectively throughout the entire game, we said that Nico was going to have to hit one or two, maybe three or four of those chunk plays, and they didn't hit any of them. Carson Beck hit, I think at one point there were 6 plays of 20-plus yards down the field, and I don't know where he ended up, but Nico didn't hit any. So that was that's what decided the game, in my opinion. Just no explosive plays. Receivers dropped. I mean, there was one huge drop there in the game, and it was a fine game by Tennessee. I don't think that they should be excluded from the playoffs because of this performance or anything like that. Now, whether or not the committee puts them in is another story. But I mean, I still walk away giving Tennessee like a B- in this football game. I thought that they played to their potential for the most part, and Georgia just finally kind of played to their potential in a lot of ways. And it was a little bit of a clinic by the Bulldogs this week.
Yeah, man, it was a complete team victory there. I was just impressed with the Dogs, impressed with the crowd there in Athens. I thought they played their part. I think it's worth mentioning too, I've never really seen Carson Beck be able to work a defensive line like he did this weekend, man. He had those guys jumping. And Tennessee, that was a big problem with Ole Miss, Mason, and that we really didn't talk about on the show, but it was something I noticed and something I kind of forgot about. The Ole Miss defensive line was jumping Georgia's snaps over and over and over again. They had it timed up. Tennessee could not figure that out this weekend. They tried like hell, and Carson Beck did a really good job of getting those guys offsides multiple times, which led to multiple explosive plays that you were talking about right there. So I think that was a really big deal as well. And not to mention, this was the best body language I've seen from Carson Beck, right? And the most vocal that I've seen him. I've heard that this week in the locker room, he was the most vocal that he's been. So maybe he finally is coming into his own and getting some confidence and, being able to actually lead a team, which you really need out of your quarterback. You need your quarterback to be a leader. There's just really no question about that. It's hard to lead from other positions, right? On the offense, I feel like. All right, let's keep it going, man. Great win for Georgia, 31-17 over Tennessee. And you said that, you don't feel like this should keep Tennessee out of the playoff. I don't think it should either, but I think it probably will, Mason. We'll see. I'm going to be highly upset if a Penn State gets in over Tennessee, but that looks like what's going to happen right now with the way the college football playoff, well, how would Penn State deserve to get in over Tennessee? I dare somebody in the comment section to explain that one to me, because there's no reason. Tennessee's got to win over Alabama. What does Penn State got? A loss to Ohio State? That's about the best thing they've got on their resume.
Yep.
I mean, and I'm not even being funny. I'm just, Penn State ain't beat nobody, dude. So, it is what it is. That's how it goes. Georgia got left out last year with one loss in a conference championship game. So, it's a cry me a river type situation. All right, man. Where else do you want to go next? We can go ahead and talk about Oregon and Wisconsin if you want to. How about that?
Yeah, we'll just start it from the top. Try to hit all these that we need to talk about.
and kind of look through some of this stuff. Weird game, right? Or just a weird game for Oregon. Um, Dylan Gabriel, 22 of 31. He was efficient. Only one, no touchdowns, one interception, 218 yards. Yeah, it was just a really weird performance. I thought Jordan James did a nice job in the second half, being able to run the football pretty much at will. He was just snapping off long, 10-yard runs left and right. I was pretty impressed with that, but man, what happened here? I really, and I'd be lying if I'm, told you that I watched every snap of this game. I didn't. But my God, man, I had bet on I had bet on Oregon in the first half to go to halftime with at least a 8-point lead in that game. And boy, howdy, did I lose out on that one. And it was a crushing blow to my betting week.
Yeah,
Let's see.
I mean,
What did you get a chance to
looking
watch
at
it, Mason? What's your thoughts?
so I was honestly, I didn't plan on watching this game because I thought that Oregon would just handle Wisconsin. But once again, we're seeing this trend where teams in the Big Ten are traveling across country and facing another team from the Big Ten and struggling. The road team is struggling in those football games. They're downright losing some of those football games that they have no business losing. And for a while there, it seemed like Oregon was bound to lose this football game, and more so than Wisconsin would have won it. We would have been talking about how Oregon just flat lost this football game. And this was really the second week in a row where Dylan Gabriel didn't pass for very many yards. Last week against Maryland, he did have 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, so was a little bit more effective. But last week he had 180 something yards, and I'm kind of wondering what happened here. Jordan James was pretty effective on the ground, averaged 4.8 yards per carry, 1 touchdown, 25 carries for 121 yards. Pretty standard Jordan James's or pretty standard game by his standards, I guess. And is it Tez Johnson not being in this lineup? Is that what's causing this offense not to go like it has the past 2 seasons? I'm kind of scratching my head here trying to figure this out. I mean, you've still got Evan Stewart, who had a pretty decent game. He seems to be getting more touches with Tez Johnson being out. Terrence Ferguson, he's kind of been ailing, but it seems like he's come back and is full health at this point. But what's going on with this offense? I think the defense. I mean, you held Wisconsin to 13 points. That's great. I mean, there's nothing to pick at there. I thought Mateo Uiagalelei had an outstanding game. I mean, it seemed like every drive he was doing something, and then of course he ends the game with the tip ball and an interception there to give Oregon the ball back when Wisconsin was looking to drive and win the football game at home in front of their crowd. And but where the heck is this offense, man? It's a little bit baffling to me. Dylan Gabriel goes from throwing at almost 80% accuracy for the season to 66% the past 2 weeks. I don't know. I don't know if this is a case of just not trying to show a ton on film as you get ready for the conference championship and playoffs and things like that, or if this is something that needs to be studied a little bit harder. And if this is becoming more of a trend, it's a 2-week sample size, so I wouldn't call it a trend just yet. But nonetheless, this is 2 weeks in a row of Dylan Gabriel and this Oregon Ducks offense sort of sputtering here a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you got to put touchdowns on the board, man. I mean, that's there's really no other getting around that. I mean, I'm not understanding. I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch this one. Y'all let us know in the comment section. You Oregon fans, let us know. I heard somebody calling into another show earlier today. I guess it may have been last night that it was recorded, but they were asking, do you still think Oregon is dominant or the only elite team, and are they still number one? That hasn't changed for me. I don't. This doesn't scare me off necessarily, but this is not the first time that we've seen a little bit of offensive woes, right? And obviously putting points on the board was an issue here. Um, I don't even understand how Wisconsin mustered anything, Mason. 3.6 average yards per play for the game offensively. I don't even know how you operate off of that. 226 total yards, offense. Average yards per pass was 8, so I guess you can kind of say that there was a little bit of a soft spot there as far as passing the ball, but 96 passing yards. I mean, only 12 completions on 28 attempts. I'm just not understanding that one. This is a tough one. And then look, I saw this too. Third down conversions for Wisconsin in this game, 1 of 12. And Oregon 5 of 15. So you can say both teams really struggled there on third down. Oregon punted 4 times in this game. That's not like ridiculous, but I mean that's kind of a lot. And then 6 for Wisconsin, which is probably what you would imagine in that situation. So I don't know. A little. We just got to kind of wait and see, I guess, with Oregon. They don't play anybody though, Mason, until the conference championship game, and I think Oregon's actually off this week. They're going to be on a bye, so that's very, very handy for the Oregon Ducks, I think. But we'll see. They'll come back out and play Washington there on the last week of the season, and it's at Oregon, right? I don't think it's not at Washington, I don't believe. So that's
right.
That makes a big difference. Washington hasn't lost at home in 20 games, ain't that right, Mason?
Yeah.
we figured that out this weekend, didn't we? Lord have mercy. All right, let's keep it going. I wanted to talk about this Texas and Arkansas game, Mason, because pretty much everything that we said going into the breakdown about Texas was correct. We did not peg this game. We thought that Arkansas was going to be able to muster some yards and some points in this one. That was not the case. The Texas defense absolutely suffocated Arkansas in this one, which shouldn't be that surprising because I have to say, Texas has got one of the best defenses in all of the country. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Now, I don't think that they're particularly just crazy stout right up the middle of this defense, Mason. But everywhere else, I feel really, really confident with Texas being. I'd have them certainly ranked in the top, certainly in the top 10 of all defenses in the country. I'm pretty sure in the top 5. I'm really, really impressed with Steve Kwiatkowski and everything that he's been able to do with this defense. It was a good defense last year, but it looked a lot different than this one. We see it now. The 2024 version looks different, but the results are even better. This is one of the best defenses statistically in the nation, and I think it's for good reason. I really like the secondary right now, and I really, really like the edge pieces. I love the NASCAR group or whatever they call it that they bring in on third down. Basically, a bunch of defensive ends out there rushing the passer on these third and longs. This defense looks good, man, but the offense leaves a little bit to be desired. And I just got to be honest with you. Now, I know there's running back issues, right? We know this. We've talked about it ad nauseum on this show here. There are some running back issues a little bit at Texas. You don't go in with your ace up your sleeve to start the season like you wish you would have. But something's just missing here, man. Beyond that. And I can't help but think it's Quinn Ewers, brother. I am not huge on Quinn Ewers. I 315 yards of total offense this game. That's got to be one of the lowest totals for that the Arkansas defense has given up this season, to be honest with you. I mean, this is not a really great Arkansas defense. They are good on the defensive line. But, I mean, look, Texas actually was able to rush the ball for 139 yards. Now, 3.4 yards per carry, as you'll see on your screen there. That's not great. But 176 yards passing. What was your thoughts on this one? I just don't, I think I saw an elite defense on the field, but I think that was the only unit in this game that I saw that was elite.
Yeah, absolutely. It was kind of a head scratcher. I mean, you look at the passing yard totals for both quarterbacks. Quinn Ewers ended up with 176, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And Taylon Green ended up with 149, 0 touchdowns, 1 interception. Who had that on their bingo card, right?
Yeah, seriously.
Everybody was expecting a high scoring game. Take the over, take the over. I kind of wanted to stay away from that, but I thought that this was one that Arkansas could win, and they were very much in this game all the way through the fourth quarter. I mean, this was a hard fought game. I think that the Arkansas defense played really well, particularly up front. I thought that the back end and credit them. I mean, they made a ton of or I guess throughout the season they've made a ton of mistakes on the back end of their defense, but this group that they had going this week, they came to play. I saw some really good pass breakups. Maybe Quinn Ewers left the ball hanging a little bit on a couple of plays, and I think Metcalf got back there and got his hands on one of those, and just some really solid play, I think, from the DBs for Arkansas. But I mean, you nailed it. It's we're looking at Texas saying, once again, which offense is going to show up week to week? We saw the offense play Florida last week and look phenomenal. I mean, 35 points in the first half, and at that point, everybody changed the channel. Nobody was watching the second half, and did some. I mean, how many times have we seen the clip of the triple reverse fake whoop-de-woo? That they did against Florida, and but they don't do that every play. I think that they're typically a pretty well run offense. If you want to poke holes at it, you're still having issues in the run game for the most part. Not a very effective running game, which is tough to do in the SEC and be successful. If you're running the ball at 3.4 yards per carry, it's tough to get your offense going. But then a factor of that run game being down is the offensive line. This was an offensive line last year that was just okay, but everybody returned. So you're thinking, all right, this is going to be a really good offensive line this year just because they have more experience. And we've seen in a couple of these bigger matchups. Now, this was the second biggest test that Texas has had since facing Georgia. And in both examples, they haven't played well on offense at all. I mean, they've scored in those two games, they've scored a combined 37 points. So this is not some elite offense. This is not what we've come to expect from Steve Sarkisian, and he knows that. So what you're seeing is a lot of creativity from his end. He's really carrying a lot of the work as the play caller, but I don't see the execution happening at a very high clip for this Texas offense. I think that they're gonna struggle down the road for the remainder of their schedule and potentially into the playoffs, just because this offense is going to get hit with another tough defense at some point.
Well, I'm going to tell you something. I mean, Mason, if Texas gets here to the end of the season and they play Texas A&M and they don't beat Texas A&M, they're out of the playoff. They got to be.
Yeah.
Because who have they beat? I mean, Double O just kind of. I mean,
not to mention they've got Kentucky next week, which Kentucky seems like they've all but quit. But if we see some semblance of the defense that we saw from Kentucky in weeks 3 and 4, which I get is a little bit of a far cry, but that's not like a get right game for your offense, right? So not a whole lot of room here for you to get right before you go to Kyle Field and take on Texas A&M, which I still think is like a pick'em game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, the closer we get to that, the more I feel like Texas A&M is setting up in a better situation than Texas is going into that last game. I'm just not. I'm not big on Quinn Ewers. I think he's a quarterback that has benefited from his surroundings. Right, he has been in a great position there, pretty much for his entire career. He didn't really play a whole lot, obviously, at Ohio State. Collected a big bag of money, went over to Texas, and he's got all the toys to play with. And here we are in the 2024 season, and everybody just thought Texas's offense is just going to get better and better and better and better. But that's not the case. And what we saw last year, that was one of the best Texas offense that we've seen in a long time. And now they've taken a step back, and I, I'm happy for Texas in the fact that they are able to win with their defense. But as we get closer and closer to the playoff, it's going to require more of that offensive unit playing complete games. Only 6 points between the second quarter and the third quarter of this football game against a defense of Arkansas that, I'm sorry, they're just not that great. That's not the strength of this team. It's something to definitely watch out for. If Texas doesn't beat Texas A&M, like I said, Texas may be on the outside looking in. When you're talking about these 2-loss teams getting into the college football playoff, you gotta have some wins to be able to counteract your losses. You can't just have, well, our only loss is to Georgia. Okay, well, that's great, but who have you beat? And the only way they're going to be able to answer that question is to be able to go to Kyle Field last week of the season, beat Texas A&M, and I think that'll be enough if that's the case. But then we'll kind of see where we're at with the SEC championship game and all that good stuff. So anyway, Texas wins 20-10. Not a super impressive one, I wouldn't say at all. All right, let's keep it going here. What game do we want to go to next, Mason? How about let's talk about this. Well, that wouldn't be right, would it? Let's do it. I don't care. This was one of the most exciting games of the weekend right here, man. I mean, you just can't really ask for more out of a SEC football game. I don't feel like. This thing was just crazy in the fourth quarter, back and forth and back and forth. I'm so happy. Congratulations to the South Carolina fans, right? Just
America's team,
America's cock. Look, this was an awesome game. We talked about it last week that we felt like Missouri may be in a situation where Coach was going to be able to really get the team up, right? And I'm talking Coach Drink for Mizzou. And I think he did a really good job of that. Brady Cook was able to go, so you don't see Drew Pine. Drew Pine has to go sit on the pine. Brady Cook, 13 of 18 in this game for 111 yards, right? No touchdowns. It was a gutsy performance. I'll give him that. Nate Noel is able to go, and that is helpful in this game, although the not much to get on the ground there. What happened here? Because I just 1 minute I'm watching this and I'm feeling like, all right, South Carolina's good, they're fine, defense is going to stop them here, and we're good to go. And then all of a sudden, right there in the fourth quarter, it was just back and forth and back and forth. And I thought for a minute there, Missouri had this thing, but not so much. You got to be quicker than that, I guess you would say. Lenora Sellers, 11 of 15 in this one, 209 yards, 3 touchdowns. I thought he was pretty much brilliant in this one, minus the turnover. Rocket Sanders came up big whenever he needed to at the end of the game, right, with the touchdown. Not a great game for him. Just offensively, it was a little bit of a stinker, right, for South Carolina at certain points of the game. I do have to say one thing, though, Mason. Nick Harbor, it seems like he's coming along a little bit here lately. We're starting to see some traction. As at the beginning of the season, we would just see him every once in a while. He's played in 7 games now this season. And over the last couple of games, he's had a couple of his best games. This was a career high for him, 69 yards. Guys, if you don't know who Nick Harbor is, I don't, no shame in that at all. But he's an absolute track star that runs track at South Carolina, runs a 10-100 meter, very, very, very fast. And we've been waiting on this guy to kind of emerge. He's a sophomore this year, a true sophomore. It looks like he's starting to get it figured out. It's going to be really fun to watch him and Lenora Sellers over the next couple of years work together and figure it out. I think it could be a pretty deadly combo if Nick can get everything figured out, which it looks like he's starting to, man. What did you think about this one? South Carolina, they're able to win even though their offense, I don't think, played their best, the best that they can play. We've talked about it being an offense that's still kind of trying to figure out identity a little bit. They kind of drive the struggle bus for certain periods of this game, but ultimately figure it out with really, really good defense throughout the game, and then a absolutely clutch fourth quarter.
Yeah, I think one of the things that was a little bit surprising about this football game is how South Carolina won it. That they won it through the air. Only 109 yards on the ground. We said going into this football game when we were doing our preview that Missouri's got a pretty good defense. They're just better at defending the pass than they are against the run, and that South Carolina is a team that likes to run the football, so they're probably going to run the football a pretty good bit, and that's going to be how they win this game. Well, they kind of flipped the script here, which is on par for the way that this season is going as a whole. But I liked what I saw from Lenora Sellers. I thought he had a fantastic game. He is looking like one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC right now, and he's finding his pass-catching weapons. You mentioned Nick Harbor getting involved in this football game. Nick Harbor is one of one, y'all. There's nobody that is built like him with that type of speed, being 6'5" and 230 pounds or however, I don't know what his weight is, but kind of a slim built sort of dude. But at that height, to carry a 10-1 speed is just phenomenal. So he's always been a project. He was not some guy that's been playing, travel football his entire life or anything like that. I mean, he was a track guy that's being converted over to play football. And so he's always been a project. And I think he's really on pace to figure this out and be someone that the NFL may rely on down the stretch and, draft early, I guess. And I my point in saying that is I think that his ceiling is going to be in the NFL at some point, but right now we're starting to get a glimpse of what he could be in the freakish athlete that he is. On top of him, Joshua Simon, a tight end. What a nice big target for Lenora Sellers to dump the ball down to. He was pretty stellar in this one. Ended up with a touchdown, 76 yards. I was just really impressed with the offense for the most part. Defense was not great. I mean, credit Missouri's offense, in particular in that fourth quarter. Absent the fourth quarter, I thought South Carolina held up really well. But
Right.
It seemed like at the end of that game, Brady Cook had his way. I mean, realistically, if Missouri had more time on the clock and could run their offense for that last drive of the game, I think they probably could have won the game.
Well, and here's the thing: the nuts, the absolute nuts that Mizzou has
Yes.
on that fourth down to throw that pass to Luther Burden. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
that reminded me. You remember who was it that Kentucky? It was Ole Miss. Kentucky did that too. Remember earlier in the season, Brock Vandegrift. It got down to
Yeah.
fourth down, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, here goes Kentucky throwing it down to Dane Key halfway down the field, and everybody's like, "Wait, what? Kentucky can't throw the ball." That was kind of what I felt like in this situation. Like, I mean, just like you said earlier, who had that on their bingo card? I mean, that is a low
Yeah.
percentage throw that I just it's clutch as hell. You got to tip your cap, but holy crap. I mean, it was just an absolute drop in a bucket to the most athletic guy on the field. And Luther Burden does the rest, and then we've got ourselves a situation, with the fact that South Carolina is down at that point. So wow, what a crazy, crazy, crazy game.
Yeah. Crazy game, crazy catch there by Luther Burden coming down with it pretty much one-handed. Um, it was just insane. He's got, his right hand on the defender, left hand just goes up and cradles the ball. You just the onions on both of those guys to make that throw, trust your receiver to make the catch, and then to even attempt to make that catch with the game on the line with one hand, right?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. I thought they won the game right there just because of that play.
Yeah.
And South Carolina, again, their offense had a really good game. They sputtered in the third quarter, but throughout the game, they played pretty effective.
Yeah, man. Fourth quarter was just kind of weird. I mean, look at that. What is that? So that's 28, 30, 31 points scored total in the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
That's weird. That's crazy. I mean, that's just insane.
Busted a lot of people's unders that they had picked.
They busted mine, brother. I can tell you that.
Yeah.
Busted mine wide open. And there for a minute, I'm rooting for just, all right, somebody stop somebody kick a field goal. And then once it busted, I was like, all right, South Carolina, just please go ahead and keep the good story going. And South Carolina was able to do it. So congratulations to the Gamecocks. That was a big win, and one that's going to go a long way in building confidence, for continuing to build confidence for South Carolina, as got a big game coming up at the end of the season. Going to be playing Clemson, and I'm telling you what, man, I'm liking this South Carolina team right now, and I'm thinking that they've got a really good shot in that game.
Yeah, I think if they are able to win out, and we were talking about it earlier with Texas, Texas with 2 losses with no great wins at the end of the year, assuming that they were to lose to Texas A&M at Texas A&M, I'm taking South Carolina over Texas with 3 losses because, I mean, they've played better throughout the year, bigger wins throughout the year, played Bama really, really close. Beat Vanderbilt, beat A&M, beat the hell out of A&M, who would have just beaten Texas, right? I mean, so there's still a chance for South Carolina to make the college football playoffs. I haven't ruled that out, especially with how well they're playing right now. I think that there's still a possibility for a three loss team to get in there.
Yeah, man. Who knows? Who knows? We've still got a couple of crazy weeks of football going on. I mean, I think it's a long shot, but I mean, like I said, who the heck actually knows? And with South Carolina's schedule and what they've done in their losses, we'll talk about some good losses if you've got some good wins, and South Carolina's got some decent wins, sure enough. We'll just kind of say these scores as we go through some of these. How about that? I think that'll kind of make the most sense, so we're not having to backtrack here. But on Friday, that UCLA Washington game, that was a good one. Washington wins at home 31-19. Arizona puts it on Houston 27-3 on Friday. That was I won't say a fun one to watch. It wasn't really fun to watch, but Arizona just proves why I've said over and over again that they are one of the most inconsistent teams in football. You just don't really know what you're getting from week to week with Arizona, specifically with their offensive line. When they figure out how to block somebody, then things kind of come together. It's funny how that works. All right, we talked about Oregon. Ohio State beats Northwestern 31-7. When we talked about that game last week, I was like, well, I don't know, Mason, going out there to Northwestern, you're right there on the Great Lakes. The wind is bad. Had no idea they were playing this one at the Cubs field, right at Wrigley, which is windy, no doubt. Ohio State struggles for a little bit and then turns the Jets on, and 31-7, and that's all she wrote for that one. We talked about Texas over Arkansas 20-10. Penn State. Penn State just every single day they try to figure out new ways to get that tight end the football. And they figure out other ways to get them the football this weekend. They absolutely dismantle Purdue. I was thinking about it on Saturday. One of the things that we were most wrong about in the offseason was Ryan Walters and the Purdue Boilermakers. My God, they are bad. Holy cow. I mean, we were like, well, Ryan Walters, I think he's the right guy. Nope. Nope.
Not at all. Couldn't
Not
be
at
further
all.
from the right guy. Good
There is
recruiter.
no sign of a pulse. This dead on arrival.
Good,
Um,
good in the transfer portal. But that says more about being able to offer a ton of money than it does your ability to actually recruit players. And so I think the Purdue Boilermakers are are feeling some buyer's remorse for some of what they've done. And I'm hearing that there's no talks of him leaving. He's gonna basically go in and fire all the offensive, all the personnel, all the coaching personnel, and kind of restructure everything. And that's supposed to save his career, I guess. But yeah, Purdue is probably the worst team in the Power Four, in my opinion.
well, you know what they say, Mason. It's an old plumber's trick. Poop rolls downhill, and Ryan Hill is on high ground right this second. So, um, that's what these coaches do. They try to fire people and save their job, and it's hard for me to sit there and believe that it's somebody else's fault, but it will buy Ryan Walters another year probably, and Purdue will have to be visiting the coaching care. They'll have to be figuring out who's available next year, and probably be keeping an eye on that. Honestly, throughout the off season and beginning of next season, I don't know. Starting to think otherwise of Ryan Walters. All right. Kansas at BYU. We called this one absolutely perfectly, my friend. We were called idiots. We were called morons. We were called dumbasses. We were called probably other things
Sacrilegious.
too. I mean, what's that?
I said we were called sacrilegious. We were called
sacrilegious, devil worshippers. But one thing that we were not called was accurate, and that's the one thing that we were this weekend. We were extremely accurate on this game. Look, Kansas has been a little bit on a roll, and we tried to tell everybody that, it seemed like things finally had started coming together a little bit for Kansas. Now, does that mean that we thought Kansas was just going to come out here and tear it up and score 50 points? No, that wasn't ever going to be the reality, but it was enough. They were able to muster up enough. The average yards per pass, look at this in this game. Kansas 14.1 average yards per pass. That's they weren't great, but they were somewhat explosive. It was just enough. Just enough. 17-13 over BYU. BYU finally plays the 2022 TCU game where they just play it, everybody really close, win it on the last drive of the game. Tried to do it again this week. The magic ran out, and that's what happens. You win a bunch of close games. Eventually, you're going to lose a close game, and BYU just doesn't look. They don't look. They look a lot different than the rest of the teams in the top 12. Mason. They don't look anything like the rest of these teams. It looks like old timey football to me. I saw Retzlaff was having some shoulder issues in this game. I'll give it to the guy. He can fling the ball. He throws the ball hard and everything. This offense reminds me of like Georgia Tech a little bit with Paul Johnson. Like, it's really about the system. It's less about the players. I don't know, man. BYU is not for real, dude. I'm sorry. They're just not. And I don't know who's going to get to end up playing BYU in that conference championship game in the Big 12. Maybe Colorado. I don't know. But whoever it is, I'm taking the other team. What was your thoughts on this one? Kansas, BYU. Kansas is able to get us the win, just like we predicted, Mason. What were your thoughts on the game?
Well, I thought it went about like we expected. I mean, look, this is a BYU team that's been very reliant on getting turnovers throughout the season. Their offense is average, I would say at best, and their defense is slightly above average but opportunistic. They've won the turnover margin throughout the season, and history suggests that at some point you're not going to win those turnover margins, and then you're in effect you're not getting a defensive stop by not turning the football over, and that's what we're starting to see with the Cougars right now. This was a great game from Kansas. I don't want to talk too much about the losers in this football game. They were undefeated, now they're not. You can call them frauds, you can call them whatever. That this was a season that, well, first of all, it's not a season that's over for BYU. They could still make the playoffs at the end of the day. But so far they have been Houdini, like freaking escape artists throughout this entire year. And at some point, their sort of luck was going to run dry, and it did in this game. Only one turnover by Jalen Daniels in this football game. I thought it was going to cost them the game, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
But it ended up not being the case. So that's kind of the recipe for beating BYU is don't turn the football over. And don't look now, but they got to go to Arizona State, who just beat the crap out of Kansas State. Really, the game wasn't very close. That's a game that I think Arizona State. I'm gonna have to do some more digging on that one as well. But I like Dillingham, and I like what he's able to do as a young and up and coming coach. This could be another notch on his belt if he's able to get this win. And remember, BYU's got to go to Arizona State. Everybody told us in the breakdown of this game with Kansas and BYU that BYU was going to win because this game was at night at Provo. Well, that didn't make a hill of beans. Kansas is playing good football. This was actually not a great performance by them. I expected them to score in the 30s in this football game. Thought it'd be a little bit more of a shootout. But nonetheless, they get the job done. Defense steps up. I mean, I guess you can look at that. That's something where they kind of played better than projected, I guess, on the defensive side. But yeah, Jalen Daniels in Kansas. I mean, this is a player and a team that you do not want to face right now if you're in the Big 12. It's just not, and Colorado is going to have to face them this week. I could see a similar circumstance playing out, but I feel like Colorado is in a really good spot right now. And then Baylor's kind of the same team as Kansas, probably not as good. I think Kansas has a little bit of a higher ceiling, but Kansas does have Baylor at the end of the year. That'll be a fun one to watch. But just kind of disappointing for Jayhawks fans. This was the team that you were expecting to see all year, and they're just now coming on late. They're figuring themselves out, found themselves late. They're not in the Big 12 race at this point. They're just playing spoiler, and they're doing a pretty damn good job of it. Kansas is no longer a basketball team, right? They're still playing football in November, and people need to remember that. Put some respect on the Jayhawks name moving forward.
Some respect on their name. Well, they'll have a chance to earn some more respect as they're going to be facing off with, I believe it was Colorado. Is that this week?
Yeah,
I think
Colorado this week, and then Baylor at the end of the year.
Yeah, a tough couple of games there. So we'll see what Kansas can do if they can use this momentum and keep it going. I'm really interested to kind of dive into that Colorado game. We're going to talk about that one later this week. You guys will have some breakdowns later today. I didn't really tell you guys yet, but so we're going to break some games down later on this evening. We've got our top 25 coming out later this evening as well. That'll kind of hit up that show. So come and join us here. I think we're going to get on about 7:30 Eastern time. So here in about 3 hours from now, we'll be jumping on and doing that. And then on Tuesday, we're going to break down some of the bigger matchups for the week. We've got all those listed out already, and have got some good ones. I know Army Notre Dame is one of them. Obviously, Indiana at Ohio State is one of them. We got some big ones. Basically, we're going to cover all of the conference contenders, right? So y'all make sure y'all join us for that. And do me a favor real quick, and y'all like the video if you don't mind. Just real quick. Hit that thumbs up button. It helps us out a ton. Of course, if you're not subscribed, hit that as well. But most of y'all are that are watching now, and I certainly do appreciate it. Let's continue with the overreaction show, kind of finish this thing up. Notre Dame over Virginia 35-14. I'm not going to sit here and dive into this one, but Notre Dame was the beneficiary of 5 turnovers in this game. So, make it that what you will. Notre Dame threw for over 200 yards in this game, so I thought that was impressive. Ran for over 200. That is offensive balance right there. When you can run and throw for over 200 a game, that's good balance. And this isn't a great Virginia defense or anything like that, but I do think Virginia is a little bit feisty. Won me some money on the money line last week, and I stayed away from them this week. Thank God I did, as Notre Dame wins 35-14 in that one. Alabama takes care of business over Mercer. Nobody cares. Georgia beat Tennessee 31-17. We talked about that one at the top of the show. Go back and listen if you missed that. Boise State at San Jose State. This one looked like a game for a little bit, and then Boise State absolutely crock-potted their ass. We'll go take a look here because I wanted to see what Mr. Genty was up to this past weekend. Aston Genty, what do you know? Over 100 yards again and 3 touchdowns. 32 attempts, 159 yards, 3 touchdowns for Mr. Genty. Maddox Madsen, 22 of 32, 86, 1 touchdown. San Jose State, it seemed like they were throwing the ball like crazy.
Mute that ad?
What's that? Oh, sorry.
There's an ad playing. Can you mute it?
I got it, right?
Yep.
It doesn't play on my computer. I've got the site muted, but I guess it still shows up through the stream. My bad. But San Jose State threw the ball all over the damn place. Couple of different receivers here that had 9-10 catches. They were obviously the hallmark of the offense along with the quarterback Walker Eget. I didn't even know who this guy was. 34 of 50. Threw a couple of interceptions there that aids Boise State in this one. Boise State stays I say undefeated. They got the one loss to Oregon, but besides that, undefeated, sitting pretty in their conference. Look, Boise State should be in the college football playoff, right? I don't really see any way at this point that they're not, right, Mason?
Yeah, I mean the question is how high do they go? Do they are they going to be ranked ahead of some of these other teams? Do they make the top 8 and host a playoff game? I mean, that's certainly possible, especially given the fact that this committee does not seem to value strength of schedule at all. It's really almost all about wins and losses, which is pretty sad. But it's very possible that we could see a playoff game being played on that beautiful blue turf in that stadium that they got.
That would be crazy. That would be wild. If Boise State can climb up that high, that would be pretty incredible stuff. Really good against the rush this weekend, right? Only 22 rushing attempts for San Jose State. 50 attempts through the air, so you can see not very balanced, about 25% rushing, but 1.7 yards per rush. Boise State did a good job there. But it was against the pass, 13.1 average yards per pass. That's pretty tough. Total offense is about even for the game. Total plays about even. Yards per play about even there, 6.4 to 6.7. Turnovers really killed San Jose State in this one, and good on Broncos to be able to turn the ball over and make something of it. 42-21, Boise State wins. They're 9-1, undefeated in their conference play. It looks like they're headed to college football playoff. As you said, Mason, the question will be more about, where do they end up in that college football playoff? And we'll kind of try to make some more sense of that in our video later today, as we'll be talking about our top 25 and kind of going through some of that stuff. All right, SMU outlast Boston College 38-28. This one was a game for a little bit. It kind of had me a little bit nervous for SMU, but SMU is sitting pretty in the ACC right now, looking like they'll be headed to the ACC championship game more than likely. But we've kind of got a little bit of a clog between Clemson and Miami there in the ACC. We'll have to see how that kind of works out. But SMU looks like they'll be in their first season going to the ACC championship game in Charlotte. Really, really amazing story there, honestly. And we're not done hearing those stories. We're just now getting started with SMU because, guys, I got a feeling SMU is going to probably be able to win the dang thing over there in the ACC. So I think SMU is a team that not a lot of people are talking about, and I think they've got a decent chance of making the college football playoff. Texas A&M over New Mexico State. Yeah. Who cares? 38-3. Kansas State downed by Arizona State. Well, I didn't see this one coming, man. I just got to be honest with you. Arizona State fans, I got to tip my cap. There was some of you in the comment section this past weekend, and you were telling me that I didn't know what I was talking about, and you're right. Yeah, I did not call this one correctly. Shame on me for predicting a game incorrectly. But Arizona State did a lot better against the run than what I thought they would in this game. That was really kind of the moral of the story in this one. It just, I really did not see Arizona State being able to clog up Ashton Jeanty, or excuse me, not Ashton Jeanty, DJ Giddens like that. I mean, I just, and he still had his yards, but no touchdowns. Was able to really limit him in the first half there. Yeah, Avery Johnson, 24 of 40, couple of interceptions. You know, he continues to be pretty inconsistent, Mason, and I think his timing is a little bit off. I saw some of the completions he made where it was just like, I don't know, they're really simplifying things for him as far as the passing routes. And then when things get a little more complex, then he really struggles. So the growth continues for Avery Johnson and this Kansas State team. You know, it just Arizona State. You gotta tip your cap to them, man. This is a team that is on the rise. They've only got a couple of losses this season. They're still in conversations, even though nobody's talking about them. Kenny Dillingham has done a really good job here, and I really like his presence on the sideline. I was able to tune into this one a decent amount, and man, I just think that guy's a really good coach. It seems like, and to take Arizona State from the issues that they've had here of late, with the NCAA, with changing conferences, all this stuff. I feel like Kenny Dillingham has done a really good job, and you got to really tip your cap.
Yep. Absolutely. I didn't really get to watch this game live, but looking at everything that Cam Scatterbo or Scattaboo, whatever his name is,
Scatterbo.
What do they call him? It'll come to me later. Anyways, love watching him run. He's finally healthy. I thought the quarterback played well just based on the highlights that I watched. But this is another example of the coaching staff, in my opinion, and under Kenny Dillingham being able to beat Kleiman and this coaching staff that's one of the best in college football, in my opinion. It says a lot, and I think with lesser talent too, when you compare the roster of Kansas State versus Arizona State. Just a really impressive overall win for Arizona State, and now they get an opportunity to carry this momentum, like we mentioned a minute ago, against BYU this coming week. And boy, that's a really exciting. That would be a really fun game and a really exciting win for the Sun Devils in the Big 12 right now. One that I'll definitely be keeping my eye on.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that one later this week for sure. What is that one in Provo? What did you say? Was it in Provo or is it at Arizona State?
No,
that game.
This is at Arizona State.
Woo-wee. All right. That's going to be a good one, man. I'm certainly excited to talk that one later this week. I hope that y'all come back and hang out with us and talk about that one with us. It's going to be a good one. All right, let's keep it going. Let's keep it in the Big 12. How about it? Colorado takes care of Utah 49-24. I was very happy because I had the over in this one, and it hit like something serious. Both teams outperformed their point totals from last year. Travis Hunter with acrobatic catches in this game. He did give up a touchdown, was kind of kicking himself on the sideline. I saw him do that a few times last year. So they said that's the first time that's happened this year. So he's obviously made some improvements defensively because he got burned last year several times that I watched. So it was Colorado continues to improve, even on the areas that they were already really good. They continue to improve. Can't run the ball, right? That's an issue for this team, and it's going to be an issue as time goes on, as the competition gets better. But that was a pretty decent Utah defense that they were able to kind of get things cracked open on them eventually in that game. And boy, they really just opened a can of whoop ass on them as the game went on. Colorado wins that one 49-24. Sitting very pretty. The Fighting Primes are sitting very pretty in the Big 12, Mason. They're got to get past Kansas this week, and then I can't remember what that last game of the year was. They got a couple more games here. What's that?
Kansas and then Oklahoma State.
Oklahoma State, that's right. And so absolute trash bag that is Oklahoma State. So Colorado should have no problem there. This weekend is the big hurdle, in my opinion. Getting past Kansas, and I definitely feel like Colorado's got a good chance to do it. I just watch out. We just called a Kansas upset this past weekend, and it happened. So, for the sake of Colorado and the story, I hope that that's not the case. Honestly, I'd at this point, I'd like to see Colorado just keep it going and then get smashed in the playoffs. Stanford comes back and beats Louisville at the end of that game. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a walk-off field goal for Stanford, the second one they've had this season. Over Louisville, absolutely stunned the Cards. This is, I feel like, what happens whenever you get a team like Louisville that really isn't playing for a whole lot at this point in the season, right? And lose a little bit of focus at the end of a game, and bam, Stanford's able to come back and win that sucker. 38-35, Stanford wins. Louisville lost to a tree. So,
yeah, just once again, another example of how bad Louisville's defense is. I know that this coaching staff with Brom and defensive coordinator and all going in with this personnel felt like they were good on the defensive side of the football. We don't need any more. We don't need any more transfer portal players. Recruiting's fine. We're good. Everybody in the country looked at this roster and said, "Yeah, this is going to be a good defense." And they're giving up 38 points to Stanford. That's embarrassing. I mean, Louisville lost this game. I don't mean to take much away from Stanford at all, but that defense just crumbled. 17 points given up in the fourth quarter, and you just can't have that. You just can't have that. Louisville is too good of a team from a personnel standpoint to be losing to Stanford, especially like this. I mean, they almost beat Notre Dame earlier in the year, if you guys recall. And now Stanford's getting their third win against you late in the season. That's sad. It's really sad.
Stanford 38, Louisville 35. Clemson at Pitt. This ended up being a decent little ball game here, man. Pitt tried to do their little comeback thing at the end of this. Clemson wasn't having it. Cade Klubnik wasn't having it. 50-yard go-ahead touchdown run to go ahead and seal the deal for Clemson in this one. Dabo Swinney running up and down the sidelines like a crazy man. This was a good football game. It was fun to watch. Clemson kind of jumps out early, 17-7 there at halftime. Pitt scores 13 in the fourth to make it interesting. As I said, and Cade Klubnik comes in the clutch. I thought Cade Klubnik played an amazing game, honestly. I was as I was watching that game, kind of looking at some of the stats and everything, and Cade Klubnik ended up 27 of 41, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's really kind of coming to his own. Antonio Williams, that's kind of the missing piece. If you can get a wide receiver, on this team to get you 100 yards a game, I feel like that just takes this offense to a whole nother level. Antonio Williams, 149 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, had a long of 28. Bryant Wesco was able to contribute again as he has. Clemson survives at Pitt. Tough game there. And I thought that was about the best we were going to get out of Pitt, especially with backup quarterback. That was a resilient effort for sure. Anything on that one?
I mean, I thought Nate Yarnell came in and played really, really well for Eli Holstein. I don't know if you ask for much more out of a Pitt quarterback than what Yarnell was able to do. I really, I had Clemson picked to win this game by at least 12, and was feeling good about it until the fourth quarter happened. It just kind of slipped away from Clemson there. Nearly lost the football game. And I'm with you. I mean, Kate Klubnik had a phenomenal game for the most part. Wasn't I say phenomenal? It really wasn't phenomenal. It was a good game. He kind of maintained his Heisman run, I guess. An opportunity to go to New York. I don't think that Kate Klubnik's winning the Heisman necessarily, but could certainly be one of the ones that ends up going to the ceremony. But I mean, 288 yards, 2 touchdowns through the air, another 10 carries for 41 yards on the ground. Him and Phil Maffa continue to be the only two players that even touch the football when it comes to running. A little bit of a depth issue there. And then what was interesting, Phil Maffa had 17 carries for 17 yards. Like, that says more about the Pitt defensive line, right? I mean, I think that we know that they're a good D front, but 17 yards, that's just hard to believe. A lot of tackles for a loss, I'm assuming, but yeah, Clemson's just not a great team, y'all. They're still, I guess, theoretically in it for the ACC, but this is a middle of the road Clemson team, in my opinion. This isn't 2018's Clemson or anything like that. They're just very average, and their defense is not that great by their own standards. I I kept saying throughout the year that they're only giving up points with their backups. Well, it's not the case. This is just not a good. This is not a great Clemson defense, and not by their standards. Like I said, this has got some holes in it, and when you got a backup quarterback throwing for 350 yards, I think it's pretty fair to say that they need to go back to the drawing board and figure some things out. They got some stuff to iron out, particularly on that defensive line.
Yeah, yeah. We talked about South Carolina, Missouri, 34-30. South Carolina, big win there. And let's just mention this real quick because we need to close this thing out. But LSU at Florida, very surprised that LSU just flat out didn't show up to this game, Mason. That one was honestly one of the bigger surprises of the weekend to me. I mean, I was just thinking LSU, maybe they lose the game, but by double digits, I just DJ Lagway couldn't even run the ball. LSU, man, I think they've given up at this point. What do you think?
Yeah, credit DJ Lagway, I guess, in some ways in this football game. This was a game that I just wanted to stay away from as far as the spread goes. I did take the under. I feel pretty good about that one, but um, I you just never know. You never know, and it goes back to something that a lot of the SEC coaches are echoing, and it's that when you play on the road in the SEC, it's different. It's different than any other conference. The stadiums are bigger, the fans are louder, the effect on the quarterback is stronger because of that. The entire offensive line, can't hear. It's a different environment. And while I still think that LSU is a better football team than Florida, they weren't last night. And I thought that Florida is, when you look at what they did against Texas, I think it's fair to say that they all but laid down in that football game to prepare for LSU, knowing that they needed this win, and then they need to really, at this point, they just need to beat Florida State at the end of the year, and they can go bowling. They've got Ole Miss this week, which I don't see any reason to think that they're going to be able to win that football game. But need one more win between Ole Miss and Florida State. I think that they get it next week, more so than this week. But this is a Florida team that desperately needed this. They needed it for recruiting. They needed it for confidence in a young quarterback. And Also, I still think that, I know that the AD came out and said that Sunbelt Billy was going to keep his job and all that. But, you still need to go bowling this season, I think, to show that there's some sort of progress being made with the Florida program. Given this gauntlet of a schedule, I would say that going bowling's kind of a success. Being able to keep your job as a head coach with this schedule is kind of a success if you're Florida's head coach and Billy Napier. So kudos to Florida. LSU is just not a very good team. They're not very well coached. Tons of players, tons of talent. Nussmeier, actually didn't turn the ball over as much this game. I was expecting him to give it up. He did fumble the ball twice, but ultimately no interceptions. I think that kind of reversed the trend that he was headed on. So there's something positive there, but ultimately, I mean, he was averaging 5.5 yards per attempt through the air and just completely inefficient for the most part. Credit Florida's defense on that one as well.
13 of 24 on third down was LSU in that game. 24 third downs forced by Florida. LSU won the possession battle 41 minutes to 18 against Florida in this game. Absolutely no excuse for LSU. That is absurd. Relatively clean game as far as turnovers. There was one fumble lost by LSU in this game. Not a lot of penalties. Just not being able to convert, right? Not being able to convert yards into points. Had almost twice as many first downs as Florida did in this game. Florida only 3 of 9 on third down. I just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. LSU is just not in a good situation. I don't think they're very well coached. I think Brian Kelly, while he is probably one of the best, 20 coaches in college football right now, I think he's right around 20. And I think when you're going and facing teams in the SEC, and I'm not saying this about Florida, but you're going to face a bunch of those other coaches that are higher up ranked than you. It just seems like LSU gets out-coached in the second half of games way too often, out-schemed, outmanned, whatever you want to call it. All right, we got to close this video out, so let's just kind of run through these last ones here. Tulane, 35-0 over Navy. Tulane is going to be going to a conference championship game playing Army. So we'll kind of keep an eye on them. We've had them in our top 25, may or may not have them in our top 25 this week. Tune in later today, and we'll be talking over that. Kentucky takes care of business, 48-6. Nobody cares. Syracuse takes care of Cal. Big win for Syracuse. They're 7-3 for the season, and probably going to make their way back into the top 25, I would think. Illinois takes care of Michigan State. Illinois puts up 38 on Michigan State. That's pretty solid. Good stuff there. Air Force, 28-0 there. There was one more. Nebraska at Southern Cal, 28-20. No sweat at all, Mason. I had this Southern Cal by 7.5, I think, 7 or 7.5, yep. And just no sweat at all. Just ended up sealing the deal right there at the very last minute of the game. So made me feel good there. I was able to hit that bet, but it was a sweater for sure. Iowa State takes care of Cincinnati 34-17. They've still just got a couple of losses there on the season. North Carolina over Wake Forest. Nobody cares. UNLV over San Diego State. San Diego State is absolutely terrible. So no surprise there as UNLV, stays within striking distance with a couple of losses there. All right, guys. That's all she wrote for us. We're going to see all of you guys on here later on. Okay, we'll be on 7:30 p.m. Eastern or just after. So I hope that you guys come and join us. We've got some breakdowns that we're going to go over. We got our top 25. Thank y'all so much for tuning in, and we will see you all on the other side.